24 cases, 7 levels. These are some of the most disturbing moments ever caught on camera. We will begin at the fairly unsettling, and as we go deeper, it becomes darker. Let's begin at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Baby Jessica. The entire country held its breath as 18-month-old Jessica McClure's photo stayed glued to TV screens. For 58 harrowing hours, family, strangers, and emergency crews worked around the clock, all hoping she would survive. On October 14, 1987, Jessica was playing in her aunt's backyard in Midland, Texas, where a daycare was being run. Her mother was nearby watching the children, unaware that disaster was seconds away. Jessica wandered near an abandoned well shaft and dropped 20 feet underground. At first, her family thought they could pull her out, but when someone tried to go in, they realized the shaft was only 20 centimeters wide, far too narrow for any adult to fit through. Authorities launched a rescue effort. The plan was to drill a parallel shaft next to the well, and then dig a horizontal tunnel to reach her. However, progress was slow because the surrounding rock was dense, and one wrong move could cause the well to collapse. Meanwhile, Jessica was trapped with one leg bent above her forehead, surviving without food or water. To help her breathe, rescuers pumped oxygen into the well. Occasionally, they heard her crying and at one point even singing Winnie the Pooh, giving the team hope she was still hanging on. Finally, after nearly 2.5 days, paramedic Robert O'Donnell was lowered into the newly dug tunnel. With the help of KY jelly and a tripod leg, he gently worked Jessica free and pulled her out. The nation cheered as the dusty but breathing toddler was pulled free. After 15 surgeries, Jessica fully recovered, although one toe had to be amputated due to a lack of blood flow. Today, she's a mother of 2 with no memory of the event, but the moment she was saved remains one of the most unforgettable rescues in American history. Panda attacks zookeeper. On September 19, 2024, a zookeeper was trying to close the door to a restricted area, but it kept bouncing back. On the other side was Ding Di, a 9-year-old panda trying to push its way through. Frustrated, the zookeeper slammed the door hard, unknowingly hitting the panda's paw. In a split second, Ding Di turned aggressive. In full view of stunned zoo visitors, he charged at the zookeeper, knocking her to the ground. She screamed for help as the panda climbed on top of her, grabbing her with one paw and sinking its teeth into her arm. The struggle lasted several seconds. She kicked and twisted beneath his weight, eventually managing to push him off with her legs and scrambled to her feet. The panda backed off just long enough for her to escape. The entire attack was caught on camera, not in the wild, but in a public zoo under broad daylight. Both the keeper and Ding Di survived without major injuries. According to the zoo, Ding Di never showed aggression again. The entire encounter lasted under a minute, but long enough to show how quickly things can shift when instincts take over. All right, let's hit pause on that for just a moment so we can give a massive shout out to this video sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Honestly, the most disturbing thing about our modern world is the constant threat of being spied on or having our information stolen. Using the internet without a VPN feels risky, which is why I use Surfshark to keep my online activity secure. It encrypts my connection, scrambling all my data so hackers. Level 2. Woman attacked at apartment gym. On January 22, 2023, 24-year-old fitness trainer and bodybuilder Nali Alma was working out alone in her apartment gym when she heard a knock on the door. Residents usually access the gym with their key fob, but Nali had seen the man once before and assumed he had forgotten his. So, she opened the door and went back to her workout, a mistake that almost cost her life. The man, Xavier Jones, whom she had just let in, didn't look like he was there to exercise. He wasn't wearing socks, and he roamed around the gym without touching any equipment. But Nali was so focused on her workout that she didn't notice him. After a few minutes of roaming, Xavier moved closer to grab her by the waist. She pushed him back, screaming, but he chased her around the gym, trying to corner her. When Nali tried dialing 911, he became more aggressive. He grabbed her and struggled to take the phone from her, but she fought back. She toppled over him, punched him several times on the head with her phone before locking him between her legs. and refused to stop fighting. Eventually, she broke free and ran outside to call emergency services. The next day, Xavier knocked on a different woman's door after watching her for several minutes on her balcony. He took a few steps into her apartment before being scared off by the woman's fiancé. With live identification from the second victim, the police arrested Xavier, who confirmed that he wanted to rape Nolly. He was charged with battery, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and burglary. 2 days after the attack, Nolly returned to the same gym, the place where she nearly lost control of her own story. She was later awarded Hillsborough County's first ever Strength and Courage Award. Possession in China. In 2013, CCTV footage from a supermarket in China captured what many believed to be a real-life demonic possession. A woman was casually shopping when a box fell from a shelf. She bent down to pick it up and placed it back. But when she turned to continue shopping, she suddenly froze. Within seconds, her body began to tremble violently. Then she let out a chilling scream and collapsed to the floor. As another shopper rushed over to help, the woman lashed out, screaming again, this time directly at her as if trying to drive her away. Her movements were erratic and unnatural, and she appeared to lose control of her own body. A man eventually entered the frame and performed what appeared to be a rapid exorcism. After a few moments, the woman calmed down. Then he gently helped her to her feet and led her away. Just as they left, the same box fell from the shelf again. When the footage surfaced on Youku, China's version of YouTube, it quickly went viral. While some viewers believe the video shows a genuine spiritual event, others point to the oddly placed camera angle, clear audio, and dramatic timing of the second box fall as evidence it may have been staged. No official explanation was ever released. Man rolls down Grand Canyon. In 2017, Cole Wagent was visiting the Grand Canyon National Park, one of the most iconic tourist sites in the United States. It attracts over 6 million visitors each year, all eager to hike, sightsee, and soak in the park's ancient history. With the Colorado River below and the canyon stretching for miles, one can take in the beauty and vastness of the canyon standing at Mather Point. But for Cole, standing behind the railings wasn't enough. He climbed over the safety barrier and sat on the rocks, hoping to get a closer look. Other tourists nearby urged him to get back, but he didn't listen. He sat on the rocks, exclaiming about how beautiful it was, and suddenly his foot slipped. He tumbled nearly 100 feet down the canyon wall, slamming into jagged rocks until his body finally came to a stop just a few feet from the ledge. That would have sent him straight into the canyon below. Emergency services arrived minutes later and airlifted him to the hospital. He spent 2 months in a coma, undergoing multiple surgeries and fighting off sepsis caused by collapsed lungs and internal injuries. Miraculously, he survived with just a few scars. But the footage taken by a woman visiting with her children continues to circulate online. Had he rolled any farther, there would have been no one left to rescue. Woman falls between train car. In April 2022, CCTV footage at a train station in Buenos Aires, Argentina, captured a terrifying moment. A woman standing near the platform edge suddenly lost her balance and fell straight into the narrow gap between two moving train cars. She was heading to meet her friend for lunch when a sudden drop in blood pressure caused her to lose her balance, tripping off the platform edge. Her head hit the tracks first, followed by the rest of her body. For several seconds, the train kept moving while bystanders screamed for help. Security staff and passengers rushed over, managing to pull her from beneath the train just in time. She was taken to the hospital with a fractured rib and a head contusion. 2 days later, she was discharged. She says she has no memory of the fall, but the footage does. It shows the exact moment she was pulled back from what should have been a certain death. We make a lot of videos about incidents like this. And if you're interested in seeing more disturbing content, why not hit that subscribe button? Let's move on to the next level. Level 3, Waterfall. In 2016, 26-year-old Heather Fzen was hiking along the Coco Crater Trail in Hawaii. She had a GoPro camera mounted on her body, filming her trek as she reached a waterfall. While positioning herself, she stepped on a wet rock near the edge. Her foot slipped, and she plunged 50 feet down. As she tumbled, her body slammed into jagged rocks on the way down before crashing into a pool of water below. For nearly 20 seconds, she lay submerged, groaning in pain and struggling to breathe. 2 nearby hikers rushed to help. One called for emergency services, and Heather was airlifted out by a rescue helicopter. She survived with 10 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and a fractured scapula. Some blamed the fall on her focus being fixed on filming, while others argued it was just bad luck. But Heather believes something else saved her. Others who had fallen at that same spot never made it out alive. X Games' death. In the early 2010s, the name Caleb Moore was a signature in the racing world. He started as an ATV racer performing several tricks on his quad. Caleb was one of the very few people in the world who could consistently backflip a quad, and he took that same uniqueness into snowmobiles. When he switched to snowmobiles, he decided to learn how to do a backflip, and in 2 weeks, he had already mastered the trick using a foam pit built by his father. In 2010, he made his professional debut at the Winter the 10th Games in Aspen and won bronze. 3 years later, he would perform his final trick on that same snow. During the 2013 Winter the 10th Games freestyle event in Aspen, Caleb attempted another backflip, a trick he had done countless times before, but this time it didn't turn out as expected. The skis on his snowmobile caught the lip of the landing area, and he was thrown over the handlebars. He landed face first on the snow, and the 450-pound snowmobile rolled over him. He stayed down for some time, but was able to leave the scene on his feet. That gave the crowd some brief hope, which was soon shattered days later. The death of the 10th Games athlete sent ripples through the sports world this morning. Some of those larger waves of grief landed right here in Idaho. At the hospital where he was being treated for a concussion, doctors discovered he was bleeding around the heart and needed urgent surgery. But things got even worse. While he was being transported for heart surgery, he suffered cardiac arrest, which cut off the oxygen supply to his brain. This caused irreversible brain damage, and Caleb Moore slipped into an unconscious state. On January 31, 2013, Caleb Moore passed away at 25, making him the first athlete in the 10th Games history to die from competition injuries. Helicopter wedding. On December 4, 2016, 32-year-old Rose D. Llamascento Silva boarded a helicopter to surprise her groom by arriving at their wedding from the sky. The Robinson R-44 helicopter carried Rosemary, her brother, the pilot, and a 6-month pregnant photographer. She had told no one else about the plan, not even her fiancé, hoping to make a grand entrance. But just minutes into the 20-minute flight, the weather turned. Light rain became heavy fog and visibility dropped to nearly zero. The photographer reportedly asked the pilot if he was familiar with the route and had flown in such conditions before. He responded with confidence, but the fog grew thicker, making it impossible to see anything. As they approached the venue, the helicopter began to descend slightly, attempting to navigate through the thick fog that had quickly swallowed the skies. Inside the cabin, alarms from the control panel began to beep, and Rosemary's brother, Solano, who had always been afraid of flying, started to panic. Rosemary reached out to hold his hand, trying to calm him down. Minutes later, without warning, the helicopter veered off course and crashed into a forest just a mile from the wedding. The area was so remote that rescue teams struggled for hours to access the wreckage. Back at the venue, the groom stood waiting at the altar, unaware that his bride had taken her final breath, along with everyone else on board. She was just a mile away, but never made it to the aisle. Level 4. Escape. In March 2017, horrifying footage emerged from Kuwait showing a domestic worker literally clinging to life. 22-year-old Ethiopian woman Adesh Sadi was dangling from the 7th floor window of her employer's apartment. Her hands gripped the outside ledge as she screamed and begged for help. But instead of rushing to save her, the person filming her employer mocked her, calling her crazy and refusing to help. Sadi hung on for as long as she could, her fingers trembling as her strength faded. Then, in a single horrifying moment, she lost her grip and fell from the 7th floor. She landed hard on a metal awning, bouncing once before crashing. Amazingly, she survived, bleeding from her nose and ears and with a fractured arm. She was rushed to the hospital, and the video went viral on Snapchat. Outrage spread online and in international news. Her employer claimed she had been trying to take her own life, but Sadi later revealed she had been trying to escape after her employer attempted to kill her. Sadi was one of many Ethiopian domestic workers brought to Kuwait under the kafala sponsorship system, a labor framework criticized for giving employers excessive control over foreign workers' lives. Under this system, workers often have their passports confiscated and face restricted movement, long hours, and abuse with little to no legal protection. It was clear that Adesh Sadi was a victim. The employer was arrested and sentenced to roughly 20 months in prison. In August 2017, after recovering from her injuries, Sadi returned home to Ethiopia alive but scarred by the trauma she endured. Ship crashes into Brooklyn Bridge. On May 13, 2025, the Armq, a 297-foot Mexican Navy training ship, arrived in New York to much fanfare. The ship had visited ports around the world, but nothing in its history could have prepared it or its crew for what unfolded at the Brooklyn Bridge that night. With 277 crew members aboard and its towering mast lit up in bright lights, the vessel was a breathtaking sight. It was scheduled to sail for Iceland on May 17th from Pier 17 at exactly 8:20 p.m. By departure time, crowds had gathered at Pier 17, cameras ready, eager to wave goodbye and wish the ship bon voyage. But just about 4 minutes after departure, everything changed. At approximately 8:24 p.m., moments after departure, the ship lost power and began reversing uncontrollably, swept by the East River's strong currents. Within 45 seconds, it slammed into the underside of the Brooklyn Bridge at a speed of roughly 5.9 knots. The collision snapped all 3 masts, killing 2 crew members and injuring 19 others. Miraculously, no one fell into the water, and all 277 crew members were accounted for. The bridge itself sustained no structural damage and remained open. But the ship, even if repaired, will forever carry the taint of the lives lost. Vegan shooting. Marcello Maraduna's TikTok account under the display name The Poop Bandit had long raised eyebrows online. In a bizarre and unsettling ritual, he uploaded daily videos of his feces, earning a mix of morbid curiosity and concern from viewers. But on May 2, 2025, his account took a far darker turn. That day, Marcello uploaded a video showing flashing police lights and vehicles outside his home while speaking behind the camera. In a calm but shaky tone, he confessed to shooting his own brother, apparently because his brother had called him a vegan. At approximately 1:30 p.m., local police responded to reports of gunfire in the neighborhood. When they arrived at the scene, they were met by Marcello's brother, who staggered out of the house covered in blood. He was critically wounded. Shortly after, Marcello posted another video. This time, he claimed that his brother had been trying to frame him as a Satanist. He also went on to accuse his brother of fleeing Ecuador to escape charges of trafficking. After the confession, Marcello barricaded himself inside the house, refusing to cooperate with authorities. A multi-agency response quickly formed, including the Oakwood Police Department, Hall County Sheriff's Office, and Georgia State Patrol. After several tense hours of negotiation, Marcello eventually surrendered and was taken into custody without further incident. He was arrested and charged with aggravated battery. His brother was rushed to the hospital and stabilized, and according to police reports, he is expected to make a full recovery. The TikTok account has since been taken down and Marcello Maradona is awaiting trial. Sloth bear attack. In 2024, 45-year-old Scolaro and his 22-year-old son Aju Coretti were in the forest near Dunger village to collect wood when they came face to face with a sloth bear. Despite sloth being in their name, there's nothing slow about them. Sloth bears are considered the deadliest of all bear species and are responsible for the highest number of human fatalities per capita in India. They have the largest claws of any bear compared to their size, and in moments when they feel threatened, they don't hesitate to start a fight on full attack. Maybe if Aju and his father knew this, they would have stayed home. Feeling threatened, the bear attacked the father and son duo, scratching them with its claws and biting off their flesh. Forest guard Nan Yadav jumped in to help the duo, but the bear caught him with its claws, rolling him over and crushing him with its body weight. Just a few minutes, Aju died on the spot, and Sukal died on the way to the hospital. Naran was severely injured and barely made it out alive. The bear vanished into the forest and has not been caught, leaving residents scared and wondering who is next. Level 5. Climbing into a zoo enclosure goes exactly as planned. On April 28, 2025, a vlogger captured a man being attacked, bitten, and rolled over by a crocodile in the Cebu Mangrove Park and wetlands in the Philippines. The 29-year-old man was visiting and enjoying the scenery until he got to the crocodile pen. There, Ali, a male saltwater crocodile approximately 10 to 12 feet long, was lying deceptively still. Before the watchers could get to him, the man climbed the fence and entered the enclosure with his phone in his hand. Seconds after getting into the water, Ali lunged, clamped down on his leg, and began a death roll, a brutal tactic crocodiles use to dismember their prey. Tourists screamed in panic as the man cried out in pain while being dragged through the water. Fortunately, a quick rescue effort by staff and the crocodile's owner helped pull him to safety. He was rushed to the hospital with injuries to his leg, shoulder, and arms. Later, he was said to have been under the influence of alcohol and likely not in a good mental state. Las Vegas shooting. On May 16, 2025, at 1:33 p.m., 34-year-old Daniel Ortega entered the Las Vegas Athletics Club holding a rifle in his hand. He walked straight to the front desk employee before pacing around still with the rifle in his hand. Moments later, a staff member named Edgar Ganesh approached him and they spoke briefly before Ortega raised his rifle and fired at the employee. Ganesh, a longtime employee of the club, was killed instantly, but Ortega didn't stop there. He moved deeper into the facility, firing at random, as chaos erupted inside. Terrified members hid and scrambled for cover while others frantically dialed 911. After shooting for a few seconds, Ortega returned to the front desk. He was about to resume firing when his gun suddenly malfunctioned. Meanwhile, it was 1:39 p.m., and officers from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department had arrived outside the building. Through the window outside, one of the officers could see Ortega visibly distressed about his jammed gun still pacing around. The officer fired a shot through the window. When Ortega didn't fire back, it's confirmed that although he was armed, it was inoperable. After contemplating for a while, Daniel Ortega bolted toward the exit in an attempt to outrun the officers. He made it only a few steps before they shot him down. Officers rushed him to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Although Ortega had a prior DUI and trafficking charge in 2013, police have found no connection to the shooting, and his motive remains unknown. In just 5 minutes, Ortega fired 22 rounds, killing 1 man and injuring 3 more inside the same gym where he once trained. You are going to meet Jesus. On December, you are going to meet Jesus 6th, 2021. 60-year-old Kerry Birmingham shot his wife 3 times outside their home in Spring, Texas. A day before, Kerry had found out from a mutual friend that his wife Patricia was cheating on him with another man overseas. That morning, while their daughter Olivia was at school, he confronted her, and things escalated fast. For 30 minutes, the couple hurled deep insults at each other. In a recovered audio recording, she insulted Carr's ability to perform and provide financially. Frustrated, Carrie pulled out a rifle and followed Patricia to the driveway. While she was recording, he stood there in an untied robe, pointing the gun at her, went back and forth talking about how they were done with the relationship. It should have ended there, but it didn't. You're going to meet Jesus. I hope it was worth it, he said, and then fired 3 times. When authorities arrived, Patricia was lying there lifeless on the property. Months later, Carrie Birmingham faced a rare alphamil jury, and his lawyers argued that it was in crime, since the Texas law allows for punishment reduction if a crime is of a sudden passion. The defense argued that it happened based on a sudden burst of emotions, but their daughter Olivia didn't buy it. She insisted that it had to be premeditated, because her father had previously abused her mother emotionally and financially. In the end, the jury gave him 10 years in prison with a chance of parole after 5. Some say the sentence was too light. Others say the law was followed. Either way, one truth remains. Nothing about that family will ever be the same. Hope it was worth it. Level 6. Drunk woman crashes into child's birthday party. On April 20th, 2024, family members and friends of Zane were celebrating a 2-year-old's birthday at the Swanboat Club in Berlin. They had no idea they were walking into the worst day of their lives. They were sitting around a table eating when a vehicle suddenly crashed into the building. Before they could process what happened, the happy occasion had turned into a bloodbath. 66-year-old Marcella, who was behind the wheel of the SUV, staggered out of the car, seemingly unaware of the damage she had done. Kristen, Zane's godmother, and the host of the party watched in horror as the 5-year-old screamed and reached for her, pinned beneath the vehicle. Within seconds, chaos broke out. Those who could still move began running in all directions, trying to find help. Someone called 911. Others scrambled to find a jack to lift the SUV. Minutes later, they managed to pull Zane out. He was barely conscious, bleeding from the back of his head, his arms limp, and his breathing shallow. But Zane wasn't the only one the crash had injured. His mother, Maria, had been knocked on the floor during the impact. She slipped in and out of consciousness, then collapsed into a coma. His 8-year-old sister, Alana, was wedged in a door frame, her face blue, her body breathless, and his older brother, Jaden, was nearby, bleeding profusely and unable to speak. As Kristen tended to Zane, someone screamed for her attention. It was for Alana. She passed the boy to her sister and ran to help, but it was already too late. Alana was gone. Meanwhile, Maria's husband, the children's father, was receiving frantic calls. He had left the party just an hour earlier, but when he returned, he was met with a nightmare. 2 of his children were dead, and his wife and eldest son were on life support. Marcella, on the other hand, was being questioned about her whereabouts and alcohol level. Even though she was incoherent, she maintained that she was at a restaurant and drank only a glass of wine, before heading home to see her husband and then driving to the boat club where she was a member. But camera footage and alcohol test levels proved otherwise. For context, 1 glass of alcohol reads 0.02 on the scale, and the legal amount is 0.08. Marcella was on 21. That's nearly 3 times the legal limit. Still, she maintains that she drank only 1 glass of wine. Also, camera footage from inside her house showed that she was drinking before she left for the boat club. In fact, when she reversed in her driveway, she bumped into a neighbor's car, but still proceeded to drive at 40 miles per hour straight into the building. Throughout the investigation, Marcella's version of events changed every time she spoke. While in detention, she said she couldn't remember any of it. Later, she posted a bond of $1.5 million and was placed under house arrest. While in house arrest, Marella appeared in an interview saying that she had a seizure and couldn't lift her foot from the accelerator. But it doesn't erase the fact that 2 people were dead and 15 were seriously injured. It took Jaden 10.5 months to walk without support, and Maria could only make a statement in court after 1 year. On May 15, 2025, 7-year-old Marcella was found guilty of second operating while intoxicated causing death and operating while intoxicated causing injury. She was sentenced to 25 to 50 years in prison. Math teacher. On the night of October 22, 2013, math teacher Philip Kism's mother called the police to report her 14-year-old son missing. School ended at 1:55 p.m. and he hadn't returned home. The next day, a police officer spotted Philip walking on the street. But what was supposed to be a moment of relief quickly turned horrific. Disturbingly, he was carrying a knife, and when the officer searched his backpack, it contained a blood-stained box cutter. When asked where the blood came from, he simply replied, "The girl." At the same time, school officials were reporting another missing person to 4-year-old math teacher Colleen Ritzer. She hadn't returned home, didn't show up to her evening classes, and wasn't answering her phone. The girl was Colleen, his math teacher. He also had her credit cards, licenses, and a pair of women's underwear. After school activities ended the previous day, Colleen Ritzer entered a second-floor girls' restroom because the faculty restroom was occupied. About a minute later, Philip followed her wearing a blue sweatshirt with the hoodie pulled over his head and gloves on his hands. Moments later, a female student entered the same bathroom, but immediately walked out after seeing clothes piled on the floor, a person with their rear exposed and another changing clothes. She assumed they were being intimate, but in truth, and proceeded to stab her 16 times. Philip Kism left the restroom minutes later and returned with a recycling bin and a black mask on his forehead. He put Colleen in it, wheeled the bin toward the school parking lot, and headed for the woods. After a long search, Colleen Richards' body was found covered in leaves, her dignity exposed with a large tree branch inside her. Philip had left a handwritten note that said, "I hate you all," and scattered her belongings around. During the trial, the defense argued that he was mentally ill, but the court refused to hear the opinions of a psychiatrist. In the end, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. But it didn't end there. While in custody, Philip Kism attempted to female youth service worker less than a year after his sentence. In a similar manner, he followed the 29-year-old worker into a bathroom, pinned her against the wall, and tried to strangle and attack her with a pencil. A decade later, now 24 years old, Philip Kism pleaded guilty to attempted battery with a dangerous weapon and kidnapping. He was sentenced to an additional 17 to 20 years in prison. The Fukushima nuclear disaster. The Fukushima nuclear disaster. On March 11, 2011, a powerful earthquake hit Honshu, the biggest island in Japan. It was strongest in the northeast in a region called Tohoku. It had a 9.1 magnitude and lasted 6 full minutes. It was so strong that it moved the Earth's axis by 6 in. Some parts of Honshu shifted 8 feet to the east at speeds close to 8,000 kilometers per hour, making it the 4th most powerful earthquake ever recorded. After 6 minutes of destruction, the Japanese people thought the worst was over. They were wrong. The real nightmare had just begun. 30 minutes later, the seafloor shifted again. It displaced a massive volume of water and triggered a tsunami. Waves reached up to 40 meters high, wiping out coastal towns and flooding everything in their path. Lives were lost, homes were destroyed. But one disaster was just beginning. Sitting quietly on the edge of the coast, the Fukushima Dai nuclear power plant stood directly in the path of destruction. It was built to handle earthquakes and tsunamis, but not this one. When the earthquake hit, reactors 1, 2, and 3 were still running. They shut down automatically, and backup generators kicked in to cool the reactors. But when the tsunami arrived, it flooded the plant and knocked out all power, including the diesel generators. Without power, the cooling system failed, and the only thing keeping the reactors from overheating was a few emergency backup batteries. But the evening of March 11th, Reactor 1 had started overheating. Tokyo Electric Power Company declared a nuclear emergency. People living within 3 kilometers were told to evacuate. That zone was later expanded to 10 kilometers. On March 12th, day 2, the pressure inside Reactor 1 kept rising. Hydrogen built up and caused an explosion, blowing off the outer building. Evacuations expanded again, this time to 20 kilometers. At the same time, Reactor 3 was heating up. Crews tried to cool it with seawater and fire pumps, but it didn't work. By the evening, Reactor 2 was also overheating. On day 3, hydrogen explosion hit reactors 3, rippling through the top of the building and injuring 11 workers. There was no time to stop. Reactor 2's cooling system was also failing, and a containment breach was looming. On day 5, Reactor 2 exploded and a fire broke out in Reactor 4. Radiation levels rose sharply up to 500 microsieverts per hour. Non-essential workers were evacuated, and Japan's Prime Minister Naoto Kan addressed the nation. The world watched in panic. Helicopters dropped water onto the buildings from above, but it barely made a difference. By day 7, cooling systems finally stabilized slightly and radiation levels began to drop. Tokyo Electric Power Company connected new power lines to try and regain control. But it wasn't over. The full cold shutdown wouldn't be reached until December 2011. And even now, the site is not fully cleaned up. Decommissioning the reactors is expected to take 30 to 40 years. Thousands of people were forced to leave their homes. Many never returned. Towns were left frozen in time, abandoned, silent, and radioactive. Level 7, Fatal Shark Attack. On June Fatal Shark Attack 8th, 2023, 23-year-old Vladimir Papov went for a swim in the Red Sea off the coast of a luxury resort in Harada, Egypt. The young Russian had been living and working in the country for some time, and was familiar with the waters, or so he thought. He was about 30 meters from the shore when a 10-ft tiger shark suddenly approached. The attack happened in broad daylight with dozens of beachgoers watching from the shore. Without warning, the shark lunged and bit down hard. The water turned red almost instantly. Vladimir's screams echoed across the beach. He yelled, "Papa, save me," as the shark thrashed and dragged him underwater. His father stood helplessly on the shore, forced to watch as his son was pulled under and ripped apart. Within seconds, Vladimir disappeared beneath the surface, his life cut short in front of horrified onlookers. Authorities responded quickly. The tiger shark was tracked down, captured, and pulled to shore. In an unusual move, it was beaten to death with metal rods by those who recovered it. When specialists later dissected the shark, they discovered it was pregnant, and the only contents in its stomach were Vladimir's remains. Think you've seen the most disturbing? Wait till you reach level 8. Some content is just too disturbing for YouTube. So if you're curious about what didn't make this seminal cut, our Patreon exclusives hold the unfiltered version. Click the link in the description.